All right, welcome to RetireJapan TV, where we talk about personal finance, investing, retirement, and life in Japan, as well as a bunch of stuff that we find interesting, because that's how it works. Cool. Hi, Daniel. How you doing?
Hello, I am well. I was a bit down recently. I physically got some lurgy thing. But no, back on top form now. And I think something's passed over to you instead, hasn't it?
Yeah, so I've got shingles still, I think, technically. Got it last week, but I took drugs early enough that I think I avoided most of the unpleasantness. So.
Sounds horrible. And it sounds like just a really bad rash, basically, isn't it?
It's a nerve disease, apparently.
Oh,
So bad cases, if you get it in your optic nerve, you can lose your sight. If you get it in the nerves for your ear, actually, this time, like the rash itself, if people can't. I had a kind of like a coin-sized rash on my cheek, which looks really unpleasant. Like most people get shingles on their abdomen, apparently, which is where the Japanese name comes from because it looks like a belt. You've got this kind of belt-shaped rash across your stomach or across your chest and so on. But if you're unlucky, like 17% of people get it on their face, and that was me both times because I've had this before. So I got these big kind of looks like really bad acne kind of in one spot, but really unpleasant, like yellow and like oozing all sorts. I was wearing a mask to hide it rather than for any other reason. Right?
Yeah.
It's not contagious unless by touch. So when the blisters burst, the stuff that comes out can give you chickenpox if you haven't had chickenpox.
Wow.
But shingles itself is not contagious because it comes from the chickenpox virus being dormant inside your body. If you've ever had chickenpox, you have the virus in you somewhere, and it could just come out and become shingles, which is and it's really painful because it attacks your nerves. So it's not just like the bad rash or the bad kind of acne, but it's actually attacking your nerves as well. So last time it was really painful, like painful to touch and like painful to move, and this time it was quite mild, thankfully.
Are there any long-term side effects of that?
So if you're unlucky, the nerve damage, it can be long-lasting, so you keep the pain for a long time. So the pain can hang on well past the disease healing. So it's really unpleasant, and there is a vaccine. And it seems like everything I've read in Japan says that the vaccine's available from age 50. Now, I don't know if you can get it earlier if you really want to and you're willing to pay for it. I'm going to ask my doctor tomorrow when I go in to have my little, follow-up.
Yeah.
But from age 50, you can get the vaccine. There's two types. There's like a cheap, less effective one and a much more expensive, more effective one. And that those protect you for like 5 to 10 years, depending on the type, apparently.
Okay.
And I would say it might be worth it because it's very unpleasant.
Yeah. Wow. How long is that going to last for? Like, does it go away after a week, or is it like weeks, months, or depends on the person?
It's supposed to be 2-3 weeks, but this has been very mild. Like I know, I started. The first thing you notice is like having kind of tight skin that's slightly painful to the touch. That's before you can see anything. And then a day later, I got the blisters. And then I went to the doctor, and I think it was early enough. I got the antiviral drugs quickly, so it really meant it was mild. Plus, it's the second time I've had it in 5 years, so I might have had some kind of immunity.
Resistant. Yeah.
But it seems to be brought on by stress or by like a depressed immune system. So not getting enough sleep or being mentally or physically stressed seems to be aggravating factors here. So take care of yourself. Make sure you get enough sleep.
Yeah. So there you go. Healthy in Japan. Thanks for listening, everybody.
See you next month when we have some new horrible illness to talk about.
Yeah. Wow, that sounds really bad. But so you seem to be on the mend now. You're looking quite well.
Quite dapper, yes. Back to my dapper self. Someone called me a boomer like 10 minutes ago on Twitter.
Ooh, wow.
I'm not. I wasn't born in 1964. What are you talking about? Yeah. Definitely a completely different generation to boomers. Actually, boomers and Gen X are next to each other, aren't they?
Yes.
So I think
officially I'm Gen X.
I'm
I've
the
been
tail
called
end of
boomer.
Gen X, apparently.
Oh,
So,
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So
It's
we're
the
quasi
cool
boomers,
one.
semi boomers,
If you say so.
the Diet Coke of boomers.
Okay, moving on. What do we have? What do we have this week then, Ben?
All right. So you had a really interesting main topic today,
Oh, yes.
based on this very misleading newspaper article that you found.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was misleading until you pointed that out. I just skimmed it and thought, oh, that's interesting. I've just posted the link in the chat and comments for everybody. It's from the Mainichi Shimbun, but I find all this happens a lot, actually. The Mainichi English news articles get spread out to japantoday.com and all these different news outlets. I don't know who actually writes it first. Oh, I suppose it's Kyodo, isn't it? Kyodo English version. Anyway, the Mainichi link is there. And the headline is, the number of individual shareholders in Japan tops 70 million for the first time. Our reactions were a bit different. My reaction was, oh, that's a lot. That's pretty good. And your reaction was, wait, that's like 2/3 or over 2/3.
Right.
2/3 of the population. I don't think so. So it shows my naivety there. And so I'll talk about why I found it interesting, and then maybe you can talk about your views on it. But yeah, I find it interesting because it shows, I feel, the success of the NISA program, which has been going for several years now, but of course it was revamped this year. And I feel that more and more people who wouldn't normally invest are now investing in the stock market. Maybe not necessarily directly in shares. Maybe it's including
factor,
ETFs and things. But even so, it feels like more and more so-called ordinary individuals are investing and putting more money in their own sort of future, as opposed to just relying on the Japanese pension, the national pension, which I think is a good thing. What was your reaction to it?
Well, I looked at it and I thought, there's no way that 70 million people in Japan own shares. So I read it slightly more carefully, perhaps, than you did.
Yes.
And it turns out that the methodology for this is that they count every single shareholder as a different person. So if one person owns 10 shares, that would be 10 people in this number. So this 70 million is actually probably more like 15 to 20 million, I'm guessing. Like my wife owns 23 companies, so she'd be 23 people in that number.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a little bit sus, but still, it's a good thing that it's growing. And I think the main driver of that is inflation, because people are seeing prices going up and they're not seeing their savings going up, and they're like, uh-oh, this is not a good trend. So that's forcing them to think about better ways to invest their savings, I guess.
Yeah. I don't think it's the marketing push around NISA, which I don't think that was just at the beginning of the year. I was at the bookshop over the weekend, and the end of one of the sort of magazine aisles, the end of it was just NISA, like, a special display thing.
MOOCs.
Yeah, MOOCs, yes. Yeah. And this is the middle of the year, it's not like it's just come out. So
actually,
really
when we were in Okinawa, we went to a bookstore and the same thing. So the half of the magazines were about NISA. So I took a photo and popped it on Twitter.
Yes, I've not seen it this strongly sort of promoted before. I think that's having an effect.
In fact, some people are saying that's contributing to the weak yen.
How come?
Because the most popular investment in NISA is a world stock index fund, normally a mutual fund. And in order to buy the contents of those funds, the fund managers have to use yen to buy dollars.
Right.
And that outflow, which is in the trillions of yen, apparently, I don't think it makes all that much difference, but people are saying this is one factor that's causing the weak yen, basically.
Or the S&P 500 fund or ETF or something like that.
Yeah, anything that's non-Japanese, basically, is yen leaving Japan and therefore slightly pushing the price of the yen down. So it's a drop in the ocean, basically, yeah. But, it's every drop counts.
Yeah. Anyway, so that article is quite interesting. But then that led me to think, okay, this is good. More and more people are getting on board, but there must still be a lot of people who are still reluctant to invest in the stock market. And so that made me think, okay, maybe we can talk about this and talk about why those people would be reluctant to. And I think a lot of it could be down to misconceptions. So I was thinking we could discuss what are the misconceptions that might stop people from investing in the stock market. And by investing in the stock market, I don't mean day trading. In fact, when we talk about the stock market investing at all on Retire Japan ever, we don't mean day trading. We mean long-term investment that can be as risk or low risk as possible, I suppose, or the best balance of risk and reward for a long-term gain.
Yeah, definitely.
Some investing misconceptions I've got then that I think might prevent people from jumping in. Investing is gambling is the first one I've got.
Yeah,
Do you think
can
people
be.
still believe this?
I think they do, because a lot of the image of investing is actually day trading. So it's like, yeah, we've got to buy this stock, it goes up, then we sell it, and we've got all these monitors in front of us, and we're like wheeling and dealing all the time. We're constantly checking, stock market information on our phone, and being very important. And that probably is gambling, especially if you're an amateur, because you're up against professionals that do this for a living, that track one stock. That's their job. So for you to think that you can go up against that person and have an edge is it's a little bit deluded. But on the flip side, if you're buying a diversified fund and you're holding it for decades, that's a huge edge. You're likely to do very well indeed over that time frame with a diversified low cost investment. So it doesn't have to be gambling, but it certainly can be.
Yeah. Another difference I see is that I think with gambling, I don't really gamble, but you put money in something. If you lose, you've lost your money. If you put money in investing, if it's long-term investing, you lose and you've lost some of your value. You haven't lost everything in nearly all cases. You've lost some of the value, but then that value might come back again because it's not a one-time thing. It's an ongoing thing. So give it enough time, it'll probably come back. This is not investing advice, by the way.
Or gambling advice. We don't give gambling advice either, which is illegal in Japan. So don't gamble in Japan for money.
Good. So the second misconception that may be stopping people is you need a lot of money to start. Oh yeah, you need millions, don't you, Ben?
Well, that might have been true in the past. So it was much more difficult to invest in the past, but recently, you can buy mutual funds in Japan from 100 yen. So if you've got 100 yen, you can open an NISA account and you can start investing with 100 yen. So even basically, I really believe any 18-year-old in Japan should open a NISA account immediately and start buying mutual funds for 100 yen a pop, see how they do, and that'll give them the best financial education possible, and it'll really set them up for life. Because having the account and using the account, knowing how to use the account, that's the biggest burden. That's the biggest kind of barrier between normal people and investing. So, and if a normal person manages to fill a NISA account, puts 18 million yen in it, and leaves it for 10, 20, 30 years, that is going to be enough money to retire on. So this is game changing for anyone in Japan.
So I've heard you say that before, and I didn't really believe you. And then I went to SBI.
Oh, ye of little faith.
Well, I thought, it's like, is it really 100 yen? That seems like, how do they make money off that? That can't be true. So anyway, SBI, I go, and when the new year started, you're allowed to have both the Tsumitate account and a sort of regular NISA account, a growth account. Previously, I've only had the growth. So this year, okay, I'll set up a Tsumitate NISA account. And you go in and you choose what you want to invest. And sure enough, it says how much you want to invest each month. And the little slider there goes from 100 yen up to 100,000. It's like, he was right. The sort of caveat there is that you can't go and then buy like Nintendo shares for 100 yen. No. You do need a certain minimum amount if you want to buy specific companies. But if you're buying a sort of general fund thing, then yeah, you get
which is what you should be doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
if you want to buy Nintendo, that's fine, but that's your kind of gambling play money on the side. Most of your investment should be in a diversified fund.
Mm-hmm. So the flip side of that is, yes, if you do want to buy an individual share, then I think there are two types of accounts. One is where you can buy, for example, 1,000 yen's worth, but then you don't actually own the share. You own a fraction of it, right, through the investment company. So you don't get the sort of shareholder rights.
I don't think you get the dividends. I don't think you don't. Really? You certainly don't get the shareholder benefits, and I don't think you get the dividends either. But I might have to check. I might be wrong about that one. But you don't get the shareholder dividends. The shareholder benefits, rather.
Yeah. So the you need a lot of money misconception could come from when you want to get an individual share, a company's share. You can't buy one on its own. In Japan, you usually have to buy a minimum of 100. And this is if you want full shareholder rights. And then it depends on the price of the individual stock. And I was looking at Konami the other day, the games maker, and for one share, I think it was 11,000 yen. So the minimum you have to buy is 100. So therefore, you need
1.1 million
Right, thank you for
to buy 100 shares, which is
for
the minimum
shares, the minimum investment in Konami. Yeah,
they are talking about changing that.
Oh, really?
So because it's a barrier to investing, and the reason they started doing that, I believe, is to prevent the Yakuza from interfering in the stock market. Because the game book originally was the Yakuza or the antisocial elements would buy one share, and with one share they could attend a shareholder meeting
and disrupt it
and be obnoxious, and then the companies would have to like pay them to go away. And this got very annoying. So they said, okay, so they did two things to combat that. The first was they made these huge blocks. So you have to buy 100 shares or 1,000 shares. And the other was they held all the shareholder meetings on the same day. So they couldn't attend all of them, right?
Right.
And both of those are slightly counterproductive now because A, the Yakuza have been pretty much squashed. And B, you can do the shareholder meetings online and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Oh, well, we've had health, we've had history. Well, there's everything in this podcast.
We're only 16 minutes in.
Wow, so much value. Anyway, yeah, so that all ties back to the misconception that you need a lot of money, so you don't. And we recommend you do the non-individual share, individual company route, which is available from 100 yen a month. Next misconception I have is investing is only for the wealthy or for financial experts. That's kind of related to the previous point, isn't it?
I guess. I mean, basically, this is the flip side. So you need a lot of money to do it, or you need a lot of knowledge to do it. And you don't need a lot of knowledge. You just need to know the kind of basics. And the basics are you need to buy something diversified that's very low cost and just hold on to it. And you don't need to research. You don't need to follow what's happening in the world. You don't need to keep an eye on your investments. In fact, that's a bad idea. Checking your stocks, your investments too frequently is going to stress you out and potentially lead you to making bad decisions. So yeah, not at all. All you need is the basic information, and that's pretty simple. The difficult thing is doing it psychologically and getting the habits. So you don't spend all your money, you save some of it, you invest some of it. But once you get those habits set up, yeah, anyone can do this. Anyone can become financially comfortable, I believe.
Yeah, I agree with that. And for people who do want just a small pointer, the Retire Japan forum is a very good place to go to ask questions. And I've seen people on there generally, even if you say, oh, I want to invest in this sort of risky thing, people will push back and say, well, if you're a beginner, you should really go for this, relatively safe option. So it's really, I think it's hard to mess up if you just ask for advice on some of these places.
Yeah, and if you're a complete beginner, you should read our free guide, which I'll also stick in the comments.
Okay.
So we have our 10 steps to financial security, completely free download. Download that, work your way through it, and that's actually all you need.
Good. Okay, misconception. Next one is, stocks are too risky. Stick everything under the mattress because you could lose everything.
Well, I mean, that's true if you buy one company. So there is, there's a chance that any company could go to zero. Lots of companies have gone bankrupt. There's a lot of churn in the stock market. So companies come in, grow, and then decline and disappear. So yeah, if you own one company, that's quite risky. But if you own a fund that owns 7,000 companies, that's much less of a risk. And over 10 years, you're unlikely to lose money if you invest in the world stock market or the US stock market or one of the big kind of stock markets.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if everyone's aware, but the way, for example, the FTSE 100 will work is it's the 100 top companies in the UK. And then if a company gets into trouble and starts shrinking in size, then at some point that company will be dropped from the 100 and it'll be replaced by another company that is growing in size. So if you are investing in a FTSE 100 fund, you're always going to have companies that are big enough to survive, kind of thing. Because if they're not, they'll drop out and be replaced by another one.
Yeah. So the fund the index manager, the person that compiles the list that the funds are based on, is doing the work for you. You don't have to follow and figure out that, actually that company's going bankrupt. You wouldn't even notice.
Yeah.
So
right, another misconception is you need to constantly monitor your investments day and night.
This is a bad idea.
Yeah.
So there's a slightly I don't know if it's real or if it's apocryphal. There's a story that says that Fidelity did a survey of their investors. So Fidelity is a big fund manager in the US. And according to this story, and I'm not sure if it's true, they surveyed all their customers, and they found that a certain proportion of their customers completely outperformed the others, like hugely. So there's this small group of super investors were in the customer base. And they investigated, and they found out that all the super investors were either dead or they'd lost their login. So they hadn't been able to access their accounts. And the common factor there is that they hadn't been messing around with their investments, basically. They just left them alone to grow, and that is the best approach generally.
I can believe that. Yeah. I bought.
I think it's a better story than I don't know if it's true. It would be great if it was true, but it kind of proves the point. It demonstrates that you shouldn't be monitoring your investment, probably, as long as they're diversified enough.
As a sort of short-term example of that, I bought Mitsubishi Shoji a few years ago, and then apparently Warren Buffett, world's most famous investor, then decided to dive in Japanese trading stocks, trading companies, and that was one of them. And it shot up, not necessarily immediately, but it did like continually go up and up and up to the point where I thought, wow, all the value has gone from this. Everyone who wants to has surely dived in by now. And I sold. And sure enough, it's still got up since then. So yeah, I would have been much better just doing nothing.
So obviously Warren Buffett's following your trades to pick up some ideas.
The one time, like, yes, yes, I'm ahead of the game. And then I sold. So
yeah, those big holding companies have done incredibly well since that happened.
Yeah. All right, what have we got then for the next? Real estate is always a safe investment. So forget the stock market. Real estate's where you want to be.
So I would counter with real estate has huge transaction costs. So whenever you buy and sell something, you have to pay a lot of money. There's a lot of concentration risk. So if you own one building in one place, that's quite risky in a lot of ways compared to owning, dozens of or hundreds or thousands of companies. And over time, it's not going to grow generally as much as the stock market.
Talking specifically about Japan now, which is obviously quite a different case to many other countries. There's also
elsewhere as well. If you count the costs of ownership, then I would say real estate generally doesn't grow as much. Now, the real advantage of real estate is that you can buy it with other people's money if you get loans, so you can use leverage. And there's often tax breaks for real estate that make it much more valuable. So there's a lot of factors to think about.
Yes, I was going to say that it's more complex. So you've got the tax breaks. We got a mortgage tax break, actually. So not the property itself with the but the fact that we borrowed money to buy it means that we get some kind of mortgage tax reduction every year. But on the flip side of that, you then have to pay property tax. So it's a lot of swings and roundabouts.
Insurance and maintenance and all that stuff.
But this is our living property, so we're happy to do that. But if it's an investment property, it's another ballgame.
Not to say that's bad. Obviously real estate is an interesting way to use your money, and lots of people are really into it. And there's some good information about that on our YouTube channel. If you look for the videos that we've done with Ziv, especially Ziv Nakajima Magen, who's a kind of real estate broker, but he's really helpful and really open about the pros and cons of real estate. So if you're interested, look for that video, watch that video, and then, maybe take it from there.
Yep, Nakajima Mugen, isn't it? I'll just put his name. There we go. I'll put his name in the comments if people are interested in searching for that. We've had another couple of comments from people just saying hello. Thanks very much. If you have questions, stick them in the comments. We're going to have a short question and answer session at the end if we have some. Again. I beg your pardon. I got this name wrong. Oh, dear. All right. I'll move on to the next misconception. You can time the market. So most people can't, but you probably can, and that's the way to beat it.
Every time I've tried to be clever with anything related to investments, it's gone completely wrong. So whether that's thinking, oh, I think this sector is going to do well from now on, to I think the yen is really weak and it's going to strengthen. Everything I've ever tried to do that's clever has gone the wrong way. So I don't recommend this. And remember, timing the market, you have to get it right twice. So you have to know when to buy and when to sell if you want to time the market. And yeah, getting it once, you can be lucky, but doing it twice or more is extremely unlikely. And you're going to do much better off just buying and holding for the long term, generally.
Yeah.
Like in Daniel's case, where, he thought that the trading companies had gone up enough, sold it, and probably lost out on another 100% or whatever it was.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. I've had that a lot. Yeah, something's gone up, and then it's
all the time.
Yeah,
single time. So I've learned to just not do it.
And it's not
it's quite
necessarily
hard
getting
because you always think, oh, I've spotted this unique opportunity. No, you haven't spotted anything. It's already priced in. The professionals saw this coming 3 months ago, and therefore you are reacting to news stories that it's old news now.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not. You haven't had a clever insight. I can tell you now.
Yeah. And then I find the regret or the not or whatever of buying or not, I'm sorry, the selling or not selling a particular time when something has gone up. That's one half. But then there's also that of sort of not doing anything and wondering every day. It's like, should I be selling now? Should I? I'm not sure. And then it sort of lies in the back of your head lingering. It's like, when is the right time? When is the right time? Yeah, not good for mental health.
It's kind of like I find this with food. So if I say I'm not going to eat snacks or I'm not going to eat junk food, I find that quite easy because I've made that 100% decision. But if I say, oh, I'm only going to eat junk food 3 times a week, then it becomes really hard because it's negotiable. So it's the same with investing. If you can say, oh, I'm going to buy and sell sometimes, you're going to be tempted to do it all the time. Yeah. Whereas if you say, I'm not going to buy and sell, then that's kind of done. It's finished. You can move on and not think about it. So
yeah, makes sense. Right, what have we got? All debt is bad. This is a misconception about investing. And I don't know, actually, why would this be a misconception? I suppose it's kind of related to property, perhaps, where you can take out a mortgage on an investment property. But there is also the possibility of borrowing money to invest in stock market, for example, which I don't think is a good idea.
I thought about this. So I found a loan a few years back that was a all-purpose loan. So you could borrow money for any reason you wanted. You can use it to go on holiday or buy whatever. I think you weren't supposed to use it to invest, but I was like, okay, so money is fungible. So I could borrow this money and then invest it. And it was something like 3%. And that kind of makes sense if you're expecting 5, 6, 7, 8% from your investments and you can borrow at 3%. But after thinking about it, I decided not to bother with that because it was a little bit too close. I didn't want the stress of having to repay the loan if the investments were underwater and so on. On the other hand, if you're borrowing money to buy a home and you're paying 0.4%, now that makes a lot more sense, I think, because I like in the recent blog post on Retire Japan, you can invest that money in the stock market. And now we're talking, if you borrow at 0.4% and you're making 4% in the market, that's much more attractive.
We've done that, yes. So we've got our home mortgage, and then psychologically, we're kind of overpaying. This is going to sound weird, but we're overpaying. But the bit that we're overpaying by, we're not paying it to the bank, we're paying it into NISA.
Oh.
So it feels like it's the mortgage, but it's going to hopefully make more money going into that NISA than it will do if we paid back the bank. So the loan is unchanged.
But 20 years later, you'll have a lot more money than you would have otherwise. Yeah,
hopefully.
That makes sense.
So far, it's working. Yeah. And that's in a standard basic multi-stock fund. Pretty boring.
Hey, boring's good. So personal finance, it should not be exciting.
Right.
If it's exciting, you're doing it wrong. You know what I mean?
That's not a great advert for our podcast, is it? It shouldn't be exciting.
But the whole point is that people don't need to spend their lives doing this. This doesn't have to take up a lot of your time or a lot of your mental energy. You just need to figure out the basics, set something sensible up, and then leave it.
Yeah, it is important.
Get on with whatever you find interesting. Most people are not interested in this stuff.
Yeah.
So our mission is very much to help people just figure out something that's good enough and just do that, because it's going to be better than what they're doing at the moment.
Right then, the next
the weird people that like it, they can hang out on the Retire Japan forum.
Yeah. Right, I have two investing misconceptions to go. One is you can't beat the market. The experts are beating the market, and you can't. So don't bother.
Oh, the experts aren't beating the market either. And actually, you can get the market return if you buy a diversified fund. But if you try to beat the market yourself, you might be lucky, but something like 4 or 5% of stocks account for most of the return from the stock market, and so the other 95% of companies are actually underperforming, and it's pretty random as to which ones are going to outperform in the future. So if you start picking stocks, then your odds are pretty bad.
Yeah, you see, so this is how I beat the market. I look at my portfolio, and so the total, gain or loss is written there. Just look at the positive ones, pat yourself on the back, say, yes, 100% on that one. Whoa, 50% on that one. Yes, I'm beating the market.
And then you ignore the other ones that are
and it just naturally, without doing it on purpose, it just naturally happens that, you sort of forget about it.
Look at my investing genius. And then you compare it to what you would have had from a diversified fund, and you're like, So that's what happened to me a few years ago. So I used to have hundreds of stock positions, buying dividend stocks and like random, gold things and 3x Russia funds and exciting investments like that. And then I kind of looked back and I thought, wow, if I just bought a diversified index fund, which is what everyone tells you to do, I would have like twice as much money right now. And I was like, so I sold everything. This is in 2022. Moved everything into diversified index funds, and it's been there ever since, and I'm not going to touch it for another 10, 20, 30 years.
Yeah. I'm a mixture. I'm a mixture of funds and individual ones, because I find it fun.
And that's fine. As long as you've got your, sensible, a decent amount of sensible investments. Do what you want with the rest of it.
Yeah. Okay, then what have we got? The last one: retirement planning can wait. So investing, maybe it's okay, but not just yet. I'll worry about that when I get close to retirement.
Yeah, so retirement planning, the earlier you start, the easier it's going to be. And retirement planning is not a 100% thing. It's not like, okay, I've done my retirement planning, I'm done. It's a process. So if you start the process early, it's going to be a lot easier to eventually get to where you want to get to, rather than starting later and being way off course. So if we're doing lots of metaphors today. So if you're in a little boat and you're like, yeah, I want to go to that island, and you start navigating towards the island, perfect. But if you wait until you're blown, 400 kilometers off course, it's going to be a lot harder to get to the island. And that's what waiting to start is going to do to you.
Yeah. And much easier as well, isn't it, when you're doing it?
If your money's growing and compounding, in 10 years, let's say you're invested in the world stock market and you get the historical return. Every 10 years, your investments will double, right? Roughly. So if you've got 10 years, your money will double. But if you've got 20 years, your money will quadruple. And if you've got 30 years, it's going to be 8 times larger. So the longer you have to invest, the easier it's going to be, the more money you can end up with. So start today. And if you can't start today, start next week. But don't wait another 10 years, because you lost another 2x, haven't you?
Yeah. Good. Thank you. I think we knocked all those misconceptions out.
We killed them with fire.
Killed them. Yeah. Nobody will believe them anymore. All right. So that's investing.
Our huge audience of, us and the 3 people listening to the.
Yeah, we're okay now. And maybe it's a good time just to look at some comments actually that we've had relating to investment.
Yeah.
Stuart says Japan Tobacco pays a 4.34 dividend. This is when we're talking about beating the market, I think. And yeah, I still like doing individual stocks because I find that analysis fun. And for this reason, I like looking for ones that are high dividend. I don't have Japan Tobacco, but yeah, that's the kind of thing that I would enjoy.
Yeah, dividends are great. I mean, dividends are easy to understand. Dividends mean that you don't have to sell your stocks. You can potentially live off the dividends and all that. The important thing, though, is to remember that you're looking at the total return. So often stocks that pay a dividend, they're more mature, they're not growing as much anymore. They can't use their money effectively, so they're giving it back to the shareholders. So often the stocks that don't pay dividends are growing much more. So your total return might be higher from that. So that's the trade-off, really. So dividends are cool. It's so satisfying to get those emails, hey, you got a new dividend, hey. But, over the really long term, especially if you're younger, you might be better off with a index fund, basically. It might grow more over the long term.
Yeah. Should we move on to our next section, do you think?
No, let's go back and hit some questions.
Okay. All right, go for it. Okay, in that case, then I'll start back earlier on. John Piroz. Hello, John. Thank you very much. This is when we were talking about real estate as well. Do you think investing in a single family home makes sense in Japan?
So by investing to rent out, I'm guessing. I think so. We've got to split this up. So to buy your home in Japan, as long as you're going to stay there, makes huge sense in a lot of situations. So it's often cheaper to buy than to rent. It's often much more pleasant. Your quality of life's going to be higher. There's all these tax breaks and so on that make it, and the low interest rates really make it compelling to buy. If you're going to live there for 10, 20, 30 years, it can really make sense to buy your home. Now, to invest in a single family home, to buy a single family home, to rent out to other people, you need to do the numbers. So does this make sense? Does your total cost of owning it compared to market rents and occupancy rates and all that? From what I've seen or what I've heard, the most profitable market segment in Japan is very small mansions. So 1 person, 1 room, little old, cheap mansions that you can rent out to people. And single family homes are much less profitable. Now, depending on the area, if they're in Tokyo and the land price goes up, that might be profitable to own. But again, I have no idea. You'd have to do the numbers. So personally, I find, investing in real estate, really the idea of it, very stressful. So there's lots of detail. You have to be a detail-oriented person, I think. You have to enjoy working with your agents. You have to enjoy decorating the thing, renting it out, worrying about tenants, all that stuff. If you do, it can be wonderful. So actually, if you look on YouTube, there's lots of examples of people that have, dozens of properties in Japan that talk about their experience and how it works. And for me, that sounds like a complete nightmare. But if you watch some of those videos and you think it's interesting, then yeah, go for it.
I've always been sort of interested in it, but I've never actually done it and probably won't. But anyway, I met a Japanese guy who was doing quite well with a few properties, and these are residential, like for families, homes. And his strategy was to find homes in kind of suburbs away from stations and things like that, with space for 2 cars. And so he would get it cheaper because it's not near any kind of public transport. And he was happy paying a little bit of a premium if it's got 2 car parking spaces, because he was almost guaranteed to be able to rent it out to families who don't use public transport. They've got a car, they drive to Aeon on the big shopping malls, and they're quite happy. And there's relatively few people doing that. So, yeah.
Interesting. So he's got a niche. He's created a niche for himself.
Yep. Apologies to him if everyone dives into that now, but
you've ruined it.
That was his strategy. Right. John also has a follow-up question, this one about the stock market. Can you day trade the Japanese stock market?
Yeah, very popular. All sorts of YouTube channels in Japanese talking about this. In fact, Rakuten has an app, the iSpeed app, which is basically for day trading.
Really?
Yeah, so their actual smartphone app is not really particularly useful for buying normal investments like mutual funds and so on. You probably want to use the website for that, but the app is it's designed for real-time trading. So
Really?
you can.
Personally,
It doesn't mean you're going to make money on it.
yeah. Personally, I'm going to steer clear of that. Right, we did have Stuart. Hello, Stuart. Aino Unme, nice name. Hello. They say investing is fun, but you can't buy retirement in Japan, so you probably have to live there before you retire on a job visa, unless you marry here. So I think you've got to spend a lot of time here, working here, to be able to actually invest to retire here.
Yeah, so there's no retirement visas for Japan. I'm guessing we have enough old people, so we don't want to import any more. So yeah, if you wanted to retire here, you would need to have permanent residence or a spouse visa, or naturalize, become a Japanese citizen, or have a long-term resident visa, or something that's going to allow you to stay here without working. And if you don't have those things, then no, you're not going to be able to retire in Japan. So yeah, something to be careful of. If you're on a work visa and you're getting to the end of your working life, you probably want to figure out how to switch to permanent resident before your job ends, because you'd have 3 months to leave the country at that point.
Yeah, I'd never thought of that. Good point. Good question. Thank you. And then Raphael says, if you want to buy American stocks, what would be the best broker to use in Japan?
So all the major brokers have access to the US stock market. So Rakuten does. Monex apparently has the best platform because they've got access to a US platform. Apparently, I haven't used it very much, but people say that if you wanted to trade American stocks, that might be a reason to go with Monex. And all of those would allow you to buy American stocks in a NISA account, which is a really big advantage. You can also use Interactive Brokers Japan, which is an American company, but they don't have NISA. So they're going to give you probably the best platform, the best access to US stocks, but you're not going to be able to use the tax advantage NISA accounts. So unless you're an American citizen, and then you'd have to use Interactive Brokers, you might want to use a big Japanese broker.
If you do invest in American stocks, so be aware there is the currency risk added. So even if the stock goes up, the currency change over time could go against you. You might not necessarily enjoy that growth. Alternatively, they could both go up, and you make more than you would, just without the currency.
Which is what happened over the last couple of years. So anyone who's owning American stocks or world stocks or American stock funds has really benefited from the weak yen, at least on paper, in yen terms.
But it is an extra risk reward factor to consider. All right. What do we have then?
That segues very nicely into our next topic.
Oh, it does, doesn't it? Which is thinking about exchange rates.
Yeah.
Because where's this on the list?
Well, I mean, obviously, the yen hit 160 recently, 161, I think, to the dollar, which is as weak as it's been in like 30 years or something like that. And people are unhappy about it. People are confused, and people want to know what to do. And a lot of my coaching recently, a lot of comments on YouTube, even people I meet in real life have been asking what to do about the exchange rate, what to do if they want to send money home, how to invest now that the yen's weak. And I thought it might be useful to just mention that here, talk about it a little bit.
Yeah.
So first thing I think we need to mention is that no one actually knows what the exchange rate is going to do or when it's going to do it.
Well, you say that. I think it was sometime last year's podcast, or was it the beginning of this year, where I said I can see it going up to 170, possibly even 180. And it's coming close. It's coming close. I'm telling you. Not that I want it to get that high, but
I'm going to rephrase that. No one other than Daniel knows what the exchange rate is going to do. So, I mean, just to give you an example. So there's been lots of people, who work for banks in senior positions or so on, who've been saying that, the yen could well hit 200 by the end of the year.
Really? Wow.
There's lots of people saying that, if America reduces interest rates after the summer, then the yen's going to strengthen. Both of those seem plausible. We don't know what's going to happen. So it's very difficult to make a decision for this. So the best thing to do is to maybe average out decisions. So, if you are sending money home rather than sending it all in one bunch, where you're going to take that exchange rate, you could split it up into smaller payments and get the average exchange rate. That's if you think it's going to change in your favor. For investing, I think the exchange rate is going to be less important than the growth over time. So if you've been investing in the world stock funds so far, just continue doing it. Ignore the exchange rate. It's going to change at some point, but just keep doing that. And 10, 20, 30 years time later, you're not going to remember what the exchange rate was doing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I tend to just.
Now I'm going on holiday next week to Europe, which means that we're going to be vastly overpaying for everything compared to 2 or 3 years ago. And that can't be helped. So it was either, do you want to do the trip or not? And if you do, there's not really anything we can do to mitigate that weak yen. Fortunately, our investments are in world funds. So we are considerably better off in yen terms than we were 3 years ago. So we can kind of deal with the trip.
Yeah. Related to that, is it Jatin Joshi, I think? Thank you for the question. What is your vision for the weaker yen?
Yeah, I have no idea. Sorry. And I think anyone who's making predictions should preface them by saying that they don't really know. Things are possible, but I have no idea. But the important thing is to be prepared. I think mentally prepared. So to be aware that it could get weaker or it could get stronger, and what are you going to do in that situation, etc.
Yeah. Personally, I think over the long term, eventually it's going to balance out, and Japanese industry and interest rates and inflation and stuff will kind of adjust, long term. But shorter term, I don't think I've said this very often, but my mum, I think, had the right idea. They're coming over to Japan later in the year. They bought their tickets back in March, I think it was. And then she changed some of her pounds into yen, like, physical notes. I thought she was crazy, but no, it's 180, to the pound right now. I'm going to make the most of it. But she didn't buy all of it. So some of her spending money she's changed, and she's going to do some nearer the time when she comes over. So it looks like it'll be even higher at that point. So she's basically hedged her bets
now, isn't it?
Yeah. So that's probably the best way to do it. If you've got something in mind, is there a way for you to sort of spread it out, because it's impossible to predict the future?
Yeah. So we should have sent some money over into pounds a few months ago.
Yeah.
We'd have saved a fortune.
But who knows?
But hindsight is everything. And another really important principle, I think, is don't beat yourself up over stuff that's already happened. So,
Yeah,
especially with these financial decisions. Oh, I sold that stock and it's gone up since. Like, that's finished. Maybe you learned something from it. That'd be good, but don't beat yourself up over it, because it's pointless.
Yeah. Right. Before moving on to the next little sort of news section, should we go to Hugh's question, you think?
Yeah.
So that we don't forget it. Hugh James, hello. Thank you for this. Is it easy to get a loan in Japan? I'm guessing you mean a non-home loan.
Well, I think any loan is not easy to get in Japan, unless you have permanent residence. So if you're a permanent resident, it's generally easier to get loans. If you're not a permanent resident, it's not impossible, but it's much harder. So I remember once I was trying to get a small loan to help with my wife's school, and we went to a dozen banks, and every single one, the first question was, do you have permanent residence? And when I said no, they were like, all right, sorry, we can't help you.
Really? Wow.
So, yep. So if you have PR, or if you're a citizen, it can be reasonably easy to get a loan. If not, no. So,
wow.
Yeah, having permanent residence, there's a couple of downsides. So you do become liable for inheritance tax abroad, gift tax abroad. But other than that, it's pretty much a good thing to be a permanent resident. It really helps with loans. It really helps with not having to go to the visa office anymore. It really helps that you're staying in Japan is not tied to your job in any way. You can do any job. Really good upgrade, I think, in quality of life.
Should we quickly do another?
Let's clear the questions while we can. Yeah.
Okay, chat in again. Any diverse mutual fund recommendations under NISA?
So NISA, you can pretty much get anything, which is nice. So the most popular fund in Japan is probably the Emax's Slim All Country Fund. So that's a world stock fund. It has Japan, it has developed countries, developing countries. It's about 60% made up of US stocks. So it's a really nice, diverse investment. Very low cost, 0.05%. It's probably the most popular fund on the Retire Japan forum, and it's a good choice. Yeah. It's not the only choice. There's plenty of similar funds, but that's one that's very popular.
Yeah, I recently bit the bullet and got some of that. Yeah, I like having fun with different things, but eventually it's like, okay, stop messing around. Just do the boring thing that everyone talks about. And so I did. And it's going okay. Right. We have Shiba Fuji Watches. Interesting username. What is the outlook for property in Tokyo and Greater Tokyo?
I have no idea. Is this before or after the huge natural disaster that's going to come soon? Because that's a thing. That's a thing. You know, if you own physical property and it gets destroyed by an earthquake, that's not great. So, and your insurance is not necessarily going to cover it completely. Right. Lots of people in Sendai had major damage in 2011 with the big earthquake we had. And insurance did not cover it because the terms and it wasn't damaged enough, or it was I had a friend whose house like slid down the mountain slightly, needed to be fixed. It cost him 11 million yen to fix, I think, and it wasn't covered by insurance because it wasn't damaged enough for the insurance to kick in.
What? It's moved, but it hasn't damaged enough.
Yeah, basically. What? It's tilted now, but it's structurally sound.
No.
So that's ridiculous. That's definitely a factor in Japan. Landslides, earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanic eruptions.
Yeah. If you'd have asked me a few years ago about Tokyo in particular, I would have said, the prices will go up leading up to the Olympics, and then after that, go down again. The novelty's worn off. But they haven't. They've continued going up even after the Olympics. So it's another one of those. We have no idea. I don't think anybody really has any idea.
Well, I mean, the thing is, Tokyo has two things going for it. It's incredibly cheap in world terms for being a capital city.
Still incredible.
Yeah, compared to London or Canada or Australia or these big. It's incredibly cheap. And Japan does not restrict ownership by foreign nationals, which is another huge one. So anyone in the world can buy a property in Tokyo. It doesn't matter if you live here. It doesn't matter if you have residence. And they are, because it's very cheap and it's a popular city. So that's really driving a lot of the real estate appreciation. People in China trying to get their money out of China and into something less precarious is a huge thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe it'll keep going up until the earthquake.
One more before we move on. King Neil, do you guys own Bitcoin? Okay, I'll go. Yes, I have a little bit. I kind of lost interest in it a bit, or at least especially the community around it, because it's now it seems to me like it's so full of scammers. So kind of like I love the technology side of it. I think the blockchain technology is excellent. I wish it was more sort of practical rather than just sort of for speculation, which seems to be what most people hold it for. Where it goes in the future, no idea. I expect it'll go up, but I don't think as much as we've seen in the past. So that's my prediction, but I could be talking rubbish.
I have a little bit, but I don't see any reason why any particular cryptocurrency should have value. I've been wrong on this for years, since Bitcoin was $20 a Bitcoin. But so the one thing about cryptocurrency in Japan is how it's taxed. So cryptocurrency in Japan is not seen as an investment. It's seen as currency, basically. So if you have a gain from cryptocurrency, it's taxed as income. And income tax rates are much higher than capital gains tax. So capital gains tax is a flat 20%, but income tax is anything from 0 to 55%. So if you have Bitcoin and you sell a lot of it and you have a big capital gain, that's going to be taxed at 55% in Japan, and it makes it very unattractive, I think, for most people.
Yeah, we should say we are not tax lawyers. You'll need to speak to an accountant. But when I've done my tax returns, it was taxed as zatsu income, which is sort of miscellaneous mixed income. And that means you
added
can't,
to your income, isn't it?
Yes, and you can't get any losses you've made sort of
Offset.
What's offset? That's the word. Yeah. So that really puts it off for me. I think there is a association in Japan that keeps trying to lobby and get it changed each year. They seem to be getting closer. More people are listening to them, but until that changes, Bitcoin in Japan is really not appealing for me.
And the other thing is, every time you switch cryptocurrencies, that's a transaction. So you're taxed on the gain. So if you swap Ethereum into Bitcoin, that's taxed, and then back again, it's taxed again. And at the end of the year, you might have thousands of transactions, all of which need to be reported and taxed. So just be super careful with crypto in Japan, because it's not established like stocks are. So if you have stocks, you can use a tax reporting account, a Tokute Koza, where the broker keeps track of all your transactions and calculates and pays your tax for you. You don't have to do anything. That's not the case with cryptocurrency.
On the positive side for a second, I feel that I don't have, this is just my feeling, but I feel that cryptocurrency companies are regulated very strongly here and are therefore generally safer from a consumer's point of view. I think
the exchanges.
Yes, there have been cases of a couple of hacks where they've actually refunded the consumer's money because they kind of had to. I think they're forced to get massive insurance to cover potential losses. So personally, I feel a little bit more comfortable with the trading companies themselves. But yeah, it's all the tax in particular that is a downside. Well, I don't think we've talked so much about Bitcoin before.
No more Bitcoin.
Yeah. All right. Shiba Fuji Watches is back again. If you get divorced, does your ex get half of your wealth that was made after the marriage, or does their income come into it?
Okay, so we're not divorce lawyers either. But my understanding is that Japan treats all the marital assets as one thing. So any money that was made after you got married, any assets that were bought, any property, it belongs to both of you and is split down the middle. That's my understanding. But I'm not a lawyer. I don't even pretend to be a lawyer. You'd have to talk to an actual lawyer for this. Now, so the stories I've heard from people who have been divorced in Japan, particularly women, is that the system isn't particularly good at doing this, and they often get quite badly screwed over in terms of alimony and assets and things. It's quite easy to hide things and say, I don't have any money. What are you talking about? So often, people get divorced and they don't get half the assets because the other spouse hides them or pretends they don't exist or just kind of ghosts them or something. So yeah, I'm not entirely sure how it works in practice or even how it's supposed to work on paper. But
yeah, in general, my perception of people I know of here and in the UK where I'm from is that there's much more sharing of finances in the UK that I'm familiar with compared to Japan. I'm aware of a lot of people that have individually secret stashes of money or secret accounts, which they keep completely separate from each other, just in case or whatever reason. Feels like it's more common over here.
Yeah, I mean, not having joint accounts is one reason for that.
Of course.
So you can't have a joint account in Japan because everyone has to own whatever it is. So you can't both own it. So that's probably one reason for that. And then also, it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you get divorced and your spouse is going to hide all their money from you, you might as well hide your own money first. So you've got some money when you get divorced and you can't, it's like...
Yeah. It's Q&A day
Let's
today,
go
isn't
on.
it?
Let's go on.
Are we going to?
We'll
Okay,
come
we're
back,
going to move
we'll
on.
come back.
We will come back to more questions later on. Then let's go to the next question. Next section, which is news and other topics. Oh, you already mentioned this at the top that your topic
we
was
did that one. Yeah,
shingles is horrible. Yeah, we can move
it
on.
is. Yes, don't get shingles.
All right. Okay, almost as bad. Amazon UK. I have had it with Amazon UK. Maybe it's Amazon globally.
What have they
but-
done to annoy you,
Well,
Daniel?
I mean, they've always done little sort of sneaky or things that I've found to be sneaky. One is when you go to check out, if you're not a Prime member, every time you check out, in fact, every time I tried it just earlier, you go and change your sort of shopping cart somehow and then go back to the checkout, they'll re-show the Prime page. Like, do you want to join Prime for free? Or then there's a small sort of, not quite so easy to notice button and says, or do you just want to carry on without joining Prime? Every time. It's like, one, get the hint, I don't want to join it. And then two, stop making it like for people that aren't going to read all the text.
Why are you being difficult?
I have it in Japan, but I don't want it in the UK as well, although I don't live there. But if I want to buy something in the UK, every time it asks me and tries to trick me into clicking the big yellow button that is really obvious as opposed to the little white button with the small text. Yeah, I don't like it. Anyway, that's aside. When I actually eventually get to the final checkout page, this is what I found the other day. I tried to do it just earlier and I couldn't recreate it. So if it happens all the time or not, I'm not sure. But I ordered, it was Guess Who. So, there's sort of the board game Guess Who, present for my nephew, ordered that and some other stuff, paid for the wrapping as well, which is outrageously expensive. That all comes up in yen, because my credit card is yen, but obviously it's Amazon UK, so it needs to be converted into pounds. And Amazon very kindly do it for me. And then, because they convert it, they add an exchange rate guarantee fee. That's what they call it, exchange rate guarantee fee. The total of my shopping was about 16,000 yen, and they added a 385 yen exchange rate guarantee fee. And there's no little cross button next to it saying, I don't want this. It's there. You can't do anything about it, at least at this stage. So it's got a little question mark thing, find out more about it. And it's actually, it is two things it does. I thought it was one, but it's two. So one, it guarantees the exchange rate at the time of your order, which is not necessarily the time that your card is going to be charged.
Right.
Apparently they charge the card when they ship it out. So for example, if they ship it out the following day, the exchange rate might have slipped. You might not get such a good price as you did the previous day. So to guarantee you, they charge you 385 yen. Okay. Which works out about just over 2% of the price of the stuff I was buying. And the second way this is a guarantee is that if you need to return the game of Guess Who, then the money you get refunded, normally it would be the money at that particular time using the rate on that particular return date. But when they charge the exchange rate guarantee fee, that means they'll refund you the money from the time that you actually bought it. So you get the same money back. It's not optional. So you've got to pay 385 yen. And they say, this means, we exchange the rate for you. We have this guarantee. So therefore you avoid hidden bank charges. Yeah, we avoid hidden bank charges by them charging us something. Oh, sorry, I got really frustrated.
Clear Amazon charge.
Right, yes. The only way you can get rid of this is if you go into one of your settings in your account and you change your preferred currency to pounds, or the local currency basically, then you buy it in pounds and your credit card will deal with the exchange rate, which in my experience is usually very competitive and there isn't normally a hidden charge. So it's a better deal.
That's the standard device, isn't it?
Yeah. At ATMs,
if you're ever
as well,
abroad and they say, "Oh, do you want to pay in yen?" You go, "No."
Always pay in the local currency.
Yeah.
And your credit card will give you a fairly decent.
So Amazon's doing the airport scammy rip you off tactic in the UK.
And this stupid guaranteed fee, which you can't get rid of. It drives me crazy. So it feels like they're just being really sneaky, and it's a few hundred yen, but I'm guessing they're doing this to everybody. So they must be making loads from it, and most people are saying, "No, you can't do anything about it," and just move on. So
to be fair, I've never seen that in the US, but I don't really buy physical stuff, so just buy Amazon Kindle books through the US in yen because it makes it easier for me to do my tax paperwork. But
Right.
So far, I haven't seen that. So it might be Amazon UK being really scummy.
It could be. And I tried to recreate it just earlier and I couldn't. So maybe they've taken that away.
Maybe they're listening. So Alexa is listening to you complain about
Possibly.
it, and they've decided to remove it from your account.
But then I couldn't find the setting to go back and change it into paying in yen anyway.
Ooh.
So I don't know. I don't know what's going on. But anyway, I took a screenshot. It did happen to me once. It may happen to you. Just keep an eye out for it and pay in the local currency if you can.
Yeah. So anytime you're abroad and they say, "Do you want to pay in yen?" You say, "No, I want to pay in whatever your currency is."
Yeah. Right. Moving on. A little tip for people here. Kakaku.com, Kakaku.com, a price comparison website in Japan. I like it a lot. I use it a lot. I don't necessarily click through and buy stuff, actually. I just use it for getting reviews, which is an alternative for Amazon reviews. I find the Kakaku.com one's pretty good. And they also show the price.
A good idea of what prices could be, you know? And,
yes.
and you can use it to price match. So if you go to a big, especially the electronic stores, and you say, "Hey, look, I have this price from Kakaku.com," they'll often try and match it or come close to matching it.
Oh, that's good to know. Okay, so that's one tip then with Kakaku.com. My second tip then is when I was looking at a solar panel. Oh, I saw on the Jackery is the name of the company, a very sort of well-known solar panel and battery generator maker. They had this short summer sale earlier in the month. It was about 30% off these portable solar panels. And I've been wanting to get one for a long time. So, this is perfect. I go onto Kakaku.com just to double check that it's not cheaper somewhere else. And in the sort of the search results for the product number that I put in, it shows the original price at some other store. So, oh, wow, I really am getting a bargain then, because Kakaku's lowest price is basically the full price. But then I clicked on to the actual product name to go through to the product page on Kakaku.com. And then it shows me the Jackery discount price, 30% cheaper. So the moral is, don't just rely on the listings and the search results when you're on Kakaku.com. Make sure you click through to the product page for it to actually see the very latest price. It could be cheaper there, and it just hasn't been updated. So the individual pages seem to update much more often than the...
Okay. So that's the company selling it eventually that you click through to?
Yes.
The actual seller. Okay.
In this case, it was, yes, but it doesn't necessarily mean that's always the cheapest. But to me, it said that they are more accurate. The individual pages are more accurate than just the listings and the search results.
Cool. Yeah.
Right. My next one. This is we had an electric sort of what do you call it? Reform kind of company come round here. Discussing some work we want done, and I said, by the way, my dream is one day to have solar panels on the roof, have a sort of independent of the grid. Anything could happen, we'd be fine. And he said, "Oh, you really want to spend that much money on it? On you do it?" And I thought, yeah, I think it's worth it. And his argument, he's the guy that would be fitting it, but he was saying that people kind of underestimate the costs and overestimate the benefits. The way or people in general, underestimate the cost is that it's, in his words, it was 200 or 300 million. Is that right?
2 or 3 million, right?
3 million. Sorry, yeah. Right, yeah, 2 or 3 million yen. If you want the full independent thing, where you have not just the solar panels but the big batteries as well, so that you're completely off the grid, and you're not going to get that money back really, because I know you've got something to say about this, but the subsidies that you can get from the government are going down and down and down over time. The money that you could potentially get by selling your electricity back to the electricity companies is going down and down all the time. And you still got to pay all the labor and stuff for actually fitting this stuff. So you're not really going to get your money back. And if you're really worried about disaster proof, one, you could just get a portable solar panel and a portable battery, and it'll last you for a few days until everything's back to normal. And two, the biggest concern is probably going to be water, not electricity. So worry about that first and spend the money on a well in the garden rather than on solar power. So I've kind of dropped my dream of getting solar power.
Oh, had your dreams crushed by some...
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, because that doesn't really take into account the cost of electricity, does it?
No, it doesn't. That's true. Which
So
tends
if
to
you've
go
got
up over
solar
time.
panels, you use electricity from your solar panels instead of buying it from the grid. Electricity prices are going up. So the subsidies going down. That's mainly because the cost of panels is going down as well.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to buy the battery now. So you can put the solar panels in, use them, get the feed-in tariff, do all that stuff. And then 10 years down the line, when the feed-in tariffs have gone to zero or whatever, then you buy the battery because it'll be 1/10 of the cost in 10 years' time because battery technology is accelerating now. So would be my counter argument there. I'm also planning to get solar panels once I've got my own place.
Yeah. That's true. You don't have to do it all in one go. Okay, yeah, that's a good counter.
Because batteries are expensive now, but they're going to get much cheaper.
Yeah. Nigel's just had a good comment actually. Yeah, there could be local subsidies as well as a sort of national government subsidy. So yeah, maybe it could depend on the place where you live as to whether it's financially.
And you'd think the guy would know about local subsidies in the local area. Unless he just tells everyone not to bother with solar panels, because that's not what he does. Yeah.
Possibly. He was an unusual chap, shall we say. Anyway, so for the moment, I kind of, put that to one side. And therefore, in my mind, this is a financial genius here, I've just saved 2 to 3 million yen. Okay.
Oh,
right.
What are you going to do with it?
Right. So instead, I bought a portable solar panel, which I mentioned earlier, and I've already got sort of one of those sort of rechargeable battery, big chunky 300-watt batteries. So now, at least disaster-wise, we're kind of set up to at least run a few appliances should something happens. Which is, for the moment, it's enough for me just to relax and. Okay.
That's a good idea. Like if you can run your fridge and prevent your food from spoiling, that gives you a few more days, basically, of self-sufficiency. Yeah, because that was a big thing when the power went off in Sendai for like a week. Yeah, everyone's food started rotting immediately. That was in the freezers. So
it was that long, was it? Yeah. Okay. So yeah, that's me. And so linked with that, the next step is then so I've got this 300-watt battery generator thing. They call it battery generator, but it's really just a big battery. 300 watts, is that good? Is that bad? I'm not really sure. And so why don't I measure the appliances around the house and see what kind of wattage they use? And I had this thing that I bought years ago and never actually used. It's called an Elpa, or Elpa is the name of the company that makes it, the brand. And it's called an Eco Keeper, or in katakana, Eco Keeper. It's about 3,000 yen on Amazon. In fact, don't have to buy it on Amazon, obviously, but I'm just going to put the full name of it there in the comments. It's really good. So it's kind of the size of a small sort of laptop charger, a bit smaller than that actually. I don't know, USB charger thing that you'd stick into the wall. It's got the consent plug thing that you plug into the wall, and then it's got another socket on the side of it, which you plug your fan, TV, whatever you want to measure into. So basically the electricity is just going through this thing, and it shows you on a little LCD panel how many watts it's using. What else does it show? It shows you the kilowatt per hour since you last reset it. So you can reset it each time you want to measure a different appliance. If you type in a rough cost per kilowatt hour, I think, of electricity, it will then total up roughly how many yen it thinks this has used over the amount of time since you plugged it in. It gives you the carbon dioxide emissions estimated for that appliance, and how long it's been plugged in since you last reset it. So basically, you use this to work out how much electricity appliances are using, and then if you want to, roughly how much it's cost. So I've done that for several things around the house. I made a spreadsheet and a pie chart.
Of course.
Oh yeah, of course. And
awesome.
So let's go through. So the way I did it is I did it for 24 hours. And so something like the kettle that we just use a few times a day to heat up water, I wanted to get a calculation like over an average 24 hours, roughly how much does that cost? So it doesn't necessarily mean that it was running for the whole time. And so the highest things so far that I've measured in a house have been the fridge, works out about 35 yen a day. But a fraction higher than that is our electric towel dryer. I appreciate not everyone's got one of these, but we have one back in the UK and just got used to it. So we bought one here. It's a sort of rack thing you put on the wall, plug it directly into the socket, and it just heats it up and keeps your towels warm. We figure it's not only feels nice, but maybe it keeps sort of them from getting damp and moldy or whatever. It uses up more electricity than the fridge over 24 hours. So now I've got the plug going into a timer so that it switches on and off through the day. Hopefully it's going to reduce that. That was a bit of a shock. In fact, the overall theme here is anything that involves heat is more expensive than any other thing. So for example, the kettle is next. That works out about 10, 11 yen a day for us. We drink a lot of tea. Oh, no, actually, no, this is not true. Sorry, because the next thing that is just less than the fridge, but close to the kettle, about 11 yen a day. The routers. We've got a couple of routers, one for the IP telephone, I think, and one for the Wi-Fi. Yeah, about 11 yen a day. All those little lights flashing on and off. So I was kind of surprised at that. But not a lot we can really do about that. At the moment, we have a little, I think 12 or 15, actually, I can see how many watts it is. It is 15. We have a 15 watt fan. And if we have that running during waking hours, so let's say 8 a.m. to midnight or something like that, that works out about 6 yen a day. So not necessarily going to change our habits, but at least it's nice to know when we switch it on, okay, this is not outrageously expensive. Or in some cases, like maybe it is, and we want to be more careful. The rice cooker works out about 5 yen a day if you use it once a day. Our little toaster thing that we use a couple of times in the morning is 3 yen a day. The TV, a couple of hours at night, that works out about 3 yen a day. The heated toilet seat, we've got a basic one. We haven't got all the fancy washer stuff, but I tried to simulate winter by turning it up for 24 hours. So that was kind of weird in the summer, but it worked out just over 2 yen a day. We have a tall IKEA lamp in the corner with 3 small LED bulbs, and that's just over 1 yen for roughly, what would it be, 6 hours or so in the evening. And the thing that surprised me is the washing machine. One cycle of the washing machine, which takes, I think, 40 to 50 minutes, costs 1 yen in electricity. I really thought that would be more. It was very cheap.
Okay.
The thing that shocked me is the air conditioner that we bought recently. So it's an efficient one. It's a small one just for a 6 tatami mat room. And I just did a quick measurement earlier, and for half an hour, it was about a bit more than that, actually. Sorry. So it works out for an hour. It's about 15 yen for an hour of the air conditioner on at 24 degrees, which is more than I expected, especially if you have it on all day and maybe even all night. So there you go. My interesting appliance discovery around the home. Yeah, if you're into that nerdy stuff, I recommend this little Echo Keeper watt measurer thing.
Interesting.
Yeah, I feel I've been talking a lot. Let's hand the microphone over to you. Something completely different.
Yeah, so this is like a kind of public safety announcement, public service announcement. So anyone using Dropbox. So Dropbox is basically online backup of files, storage, etc. I've been using it for a long time. But it's changed recently. So Dropbox used to be, you have the files on your computer, and then automatically it backs them up to the cloud. So you've got them on your computer. They're also on the cloud. It gives you a bit of safety. And, if you delete something, you can recover it and stuff like that. However, recently they changed their kind of default settings so that now it's kind of default to online storage only. So you no longer have a copy of the files on your computer. They're just online. And this saves you hard disk space, I guess. So you can have a whole bunch of files that you just have a link to them on your computer. And anytime you want to use them, they'll download them from Dropbox and you'll get the file. It takes a couple of seconds. You're able to use it. Now, the risk here is that apparently Dropbox is quite aggressive with its terms of service and so on. And so they'll just turn off your account with no notice if they feel that you violated their terms of service in any way.
One example of that, I guess, is like they've detected a document with some content that they don't like, they object to.
Yeah, so anything copyrighted, anything that's like spammy or controversial, anything they don't like, basically. And so in that situation, if you didn't have the files on your computer, you no longer have access to your files. And apparently it's very hard to actually communicate with them in terms of contacting customer service or getting them to review your case or whatever. So I would recommend going into the settings and just changing that back to full offline backup so that you have all the files on your computer and they're also on Dropbox. And then, if something happens to your Dropbox account, you've still got all your files.
That sounds kind of sneaky to me.
And the fact that, they just made that change where they're like, oh, now it's offline. It's very convenient, but you might end up with no files at all. So that's kind of the opposite of what cloud storage was supposed to do, right? So
yeah.
I'm not sure how Apple cloud storage works. Is it similar?
It doesn't take the files off locally. No,
okay, so you have the local files plus backup or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, basically, whatever you're using, make sure that you actually physically own the files yourself as well.
All right, moving on. Oh, you said that summer is nice this year.
I did, and then it got really hot today. So I no longer stand by this assertion. So. Summer was nice this year, and even today seemed all right. But yeah, it was pretty hot today in Sendai. It's like 33, I think. But I think I have this theory that the longer you live here, the more used to the summer you get. So I used to find summers absolutely unbearable, and now I find quite pleasant. So I don't know if that's because I've lost some weight or because I've been living here for 24 years, but it does get better. So if you just got to Japan and you're like drowning in your own air, the moisture, it gets better, is all I can say.
Yeah. Actually, that's funny you say that, because this weekend we bought what is it? Nitori En Cool.
Ooh! Did you get the fully cold ones
thing? Yes, they got different levels. I didn't realize it was so confusing in the shop.
Level
and
4,
then they even have
whatever.
They have the same thing in a different place because they're really keen to sell it. What's this thing? Oh, it's the same thing. It was confusing, but it was recommended in Monoclo magazine, which I like. So the technology seems to be good. It's not just sort of marketing speak, apparently. And the N Cool, so it's a letter N and then Kuru, katakana Kuru series, is not just mattress pads. They have pillowcase
sheets and anything fabric is, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's slightly padded because inside is some kind of gel or powder or something that somehow absorbs the heat. And the Monoclo magazine shows you infrared camera or heat camera things, which shows that it's effective somehow. So we bought the extreme version of that, and actually our son's been using it for the last few days. And see if I can ask him, out of 10, how would you rate the N-Cool pad thing on your bed over the last few days in terms of feeling cool? 8.5 out of 10. So it is noticeable, then, you think, compared to before? There you go. I think not dramatically noticeable, but definitely noticeable. There you go. Nice. 8.5 out of 10. Because he doesn't have an air conditioner in his room. Poor thing.
Child abuse.
He has a little fan, and so we treated him to this thing as well. So between them, hopefully that's enough to keep cool. But yeah, it does seem like it makes a difference. The first,
please, sir, can I have some more cool air?
He's old enough now. He's fine. He is legally an adult, I should point out to anybody. We tried it out though. It does feel cool to the touch initially when you lie on it, and then that's the initial effect. But in addition to that, it does seem to somehow absorb the heat as well when you're lying on it and sleeping on it. And
nice.
Yeah,
my granddaughters have ice gel pillows now, so they put them in the freezer and then go to bed.
Actually, he uses that as well during the day. He has them in the freezer, and sometimes they'll sort of go to normal temperature within 30 or certainly within an hour, I think he said. But when you first put them on, it's wonderful. He loves them. He's a good guinea pig, isn't he? A good test subject.
Excellent.
Right. A final one. Yeah, I put on here. I think you shared this in the Retire Japan newsletter, which I recommend everybody. Weekly link to the blog post. And this was called, it's from Reuters. Japan finds a stealth cure, stealth in quotes, for zombie businesses. Let them fail. I'll put the link in the comments for everybody. And what it is because of the declining population and lots of businesses or small businesses in Japan, sort of gradually, the owner is coming to the end of the working life. They're kind of, the unofficial policy seems to be, according to this article, just let them fail and concentrate instead on businesses that are going to grow rather than trying to prop them up.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, these businesses are surviving on zero interest loans, basically. And
yeah,
so
especially from the pandemic
they've
era.
cut off the loans now, so.
Yeah.
Which kind of makes sense.
Yeah,
Interest
or
rates
mergers,
going up, etc.
mergers and acquisitions. I think they're encouraging, or they're trying to sort of set up support for bigger companies that want to buy them up. But yeah, in many cases, you're not going to get a good price for them, or they'll just be left to die. Which is sad. It does make me wonder. Sometimes you walk around and you see a little company and think, how is that thing surviving in this economy?
Low interest loan.
Yeah.
We went to a city in Shikoku, and it was shocking. It was by far the worst I've ever seen in terms of like shuttered businesses. Like, I think something like 70% of the businesses were shuttered, basically.
Really?
It was like this. It was like a zombie apocalypse film, like 28 days later or something. Everything shut, no people, like no foot traffic, dead. And that's the future of Japan, isn't it? Lots of places in Japan, in terms of population falling, workers falling, businesses not viable, businesses go, and then what have you got left? Like, not a lot.
Now, this is what I hear, and yet walking around this part, so I live in Kanagawa, and sort of an hour or so out of Yokohama, and yet in this sort of urban area where we live, if there's a plot of land, it gets bought up and developed on so quickly. And I think, like, who's going to buy these? Because from what I read in the news, Japan's population is declining rapidly, and there's going to be nobody left. Like,
because they're all moving to Tokyo and Yokohama.
Really though? I don't know. It feels.
Yeah, I mean, you live in a very popular area. So.
Yeah, must be. It feels like there's almost sort of two Japans.
Go to Aomori and see what that looks like.
Oh, yeah.
Or Akita, or even rural Miyagi. You can drive 30 minutes out of Sendai, and it's like, oh my god, the average age is now 80.
Right.
And that's 30 minutes from a major city. So I mean, there's whole swathes of Japan that are not going to be there in 15 years' time.
So is it really like a two-tier Japan we're seeing here, I think?
Yeah, absolutely. So the cities are fine. People move to the cities. People, young people move to the cities and then don't live anywhere else, basically.
Yeah.
So, and then some places are trying to combat that, with subsidies or by trying to make their communities more attractive. And sometimes it works, and a lot of the time it doesn't. So.
And this is why we have lots of Akia in the countryside.
Indeed.
All right.
You're going to do your thing now, aren't you?
Oh, yes. Are you ready? So it's time for Daniel's money tip, everybody. And what does that mean? It means jingle time. I just worked out how to do that properly, so I'm very pleased with myself. It's the little things. Right. I was looking to get a new bike, as in like pedal, or so the Dendor, what do you call it? Electric assist bike. That's what it is. And I've heard, in fact, I've been once in Tokyo to when the police release bikes that they've impounded after 3 months or so, I think it is. And I thought, cool, I'll do that in my area. I'll go and see what they've got and get a cheap bike. But it turns out my area doesn't do that anymore. If you go to the website, it says, instead, please go to, in this case, I'm in Kamakura. It says, please go to Ryusunetto Kamakura instead. So I go to that, and it turns out they've got this relatively new system where instead of getting rid of the bikes, they just have this almost like sort of community level giveaway kind of scheme where people, citizens, can tell it's So I can't work out if it's a non-profit or if it's part of the government arm or something, but certainly linked to from the Xiax or the City Hall website. So you tell them about stuff that you either want to give away or get a very small bit of money for, and they'll put it on this rather old school looking list. And then if you want one of those, then you go to the Xiax or whatever it is and say, I want that. And then they'll sort of put you in touch. I think another thing I can't work out is whether you go to the person directly or whether it's the Xiaxo that holds all this stuff.
Ah, right.
It's pretty good. And so I guess that every time the police do one of these, release all the bike things, then they'll add it to this list. I think, from what I understood, it's going to happen next September, where I am. So anyway, that's interesting to look out for. But aside from the bike, this list of stuff that is being given away or sold very cheaply is really interesting. So just today, somebody is giving away 2 sort of wooden cupboards with shelves in and nice little glass doors. That looks very nice. That's 0 yen. There's a sideboard. There's a wooden table. There's a balance chair. The balance chair, for some reason, is 9,000 yen. The side table and the wooden table are 0 yen. There's a bookshelf for 300 yen. There's another table for 0 yen. So quite a bit of furniture there, most of it for free. Then we go into the clothing section, and you've got a blouse, you've got shorts, you've got shoes, and they are mostly just a few hundred yen, quite a lot of those. Oh, actually, why did I put this? So I'm assuming most people aren't based in Kamakura, but just as an example, let me put the list of all this in the comments, because maybe there is something similar where you live. Also, there's a section full of teacups and plates and stuff. If you're setting up a new apartment, it could be pretty handy. There's a whole bunch of kids and baby equipment and toys. And then you get miscellaneous stuff from CDs to a shop mannequin to a toothbrush. It's sealed. It's not been used, but somebody has put on this list that they want to give you for free a toothbrush.
I'm glad it's sealed.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so yeah, this is just specifically for Kamakura, but it automatically made me think it's probably happening around the country in different places. And so I had a quick search, and it really is kind of hit and miss. So apologies if this is not in your area. I had a look at Sendai, and I couldn't see one for Sendai. I did see, I think it was Reuse Plaza or Recycled Plaza, which is a similar thing, but it's more event based. So on this particular day, you can go and pick up stuff. In that particular case, I think it was limited to 1 item per person. Yeah, as you can see, Kamakura does it sort of online. And then other places are still doing the traditional, especially in Tokyo, the bikes, and the police will release them a particular time every month or whatever. So how do you know? This is the tricky thing, because if you search for recycle or something, you'll get regular recycle shops. So it seems to be that these cities tend to use the same terminology. You've got recycled hanbai, which is often used for the bicycles. In this case, though, reuse seems to be commonly used. So reuse, extend it, and then a su. So if you look for reuse, and then your city name, or ku if you're in Tokyo, with the, I would include the shi. So instead of just Kamakura, I would say Kamakura shi is more likely, because that's the terminology they use on their sort of government websites. Alternatively, you could try fuyohin. So fuyohin, like not used thing, not useful thing. And then again, the name of your city, recycled hanbai maybe. But I've noticed some of these lists, they all use the terminology yuzuritai or yuzutte kudasai. So please, I've got this to give away, or please give it away. So yuzuritai, and then the name of your city. That might also work. Unfortunately, there's not one quick way of finding everything that I could see, but maybe those key terms will help you find something similar in your area. That's Daniel's money tip for today.
And green as well. So
yes,
we can avoid waste and reuse things.
Yes.
Nice.
They're looking for a bicycle.
Awesome. Right, quick forum updates. We'll answer the rest of the questions, and then we're going to wrap up, I think.
Okay.
So, on the forum recently, we had a post about someone getting their Rakuten Securities account locked. Seems to be because they didn't upload their Zaidu card when Rakuten was asking for it. So be careful about that. They're getting very aggressive with documents. So if you don't upload your documents in time, they will lock your account, and it's a pain to get it unlocked.
I was going to say, can't you just send them a copy of your Zaidu card to get it unlocked, or is it more of a?
Because it's locked at that point. You've got to phone them up and get it unlocked and all that stuff.
Okay.
So your account is not operational.
Right. So you do give them the Zaidu card. You just can't do it online. You've got to somehow get stuff through the post and blah, blah, blah. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure, but it's probably easier to just send them the documents when they ask for it.
Yeah.
We had a thing about renting while retired, which is a huge problem because obviously in Japan, landlords have a lot of leeway on who they choose to rent their properties to. And many landlords choose not to rent their properties to non-Japanese people. And they also choose not to rent their properties to old people. So if you're an old non-Japanese person, you got that double whammy. It's going to be very difficult in some situations to rent. So just be aware of that issue. If you're going to be here for a long time, you might want to buy your home or make sure that, you do have options going forward. There was a thing about installing air conditioning units. Seems like prices are going up. So often the price in the shops is not going to include installation, and installation can be very expensive. So make sure you get the total cost of purchase before making a decision.
Actually, we did this a month or two ago, and the installation was included, which was all very good. But then you've got the pipe and stuff, and they give you a certain number of meters.
Oh, you wanted a pipe? Oh, well, that's going to cost you.
Right. I'm sure in the shop he said 5 meters, but I don't have it written down. I'm sure he said 5 meters. Anyway, when it came down to it, I think 2 meters were included, and then any more than that, and that's where the price really jumps. Like, this much for a meter of extra pipe? What? And then if you want to put the cover on it to hide the pipe, on the wall, that's really expensive as well, and that's not included at all. Yeah, that was really where they seemed to bump up the charges.
Carpe emptor.
Mm-hmm.
We had a thing about UK non-resident landlord paperwork. So if you're a UK non-resident landlord, you might be interested in that thread. We had a thread about the Amex Bonvoy card, which is a card that I use. So people wanting referral codes for that. If you're going to sign up, do let me know. I'd be really happy to give you my referral code and get some points. You'd get some points as well. We had a thread about currency manipulation by the Japanese government sabotaging everyone's NISA accounts, which I didn't quite agree with, but it was an interesting thread in the end. And we had a thread about using 2 taxable accounts, which is annoying because if you have one taxable account, you can offset your losses against your gains, and the broker does it all automatically, and you only pay as much tax as you have to. But if you have 2 with different brokers, they don't talk to each other. So you can't offset the gains in one tax reporting account against the other, and then it kind of defeats the object of having a tax reporting account. You basically have to do a tax return with the paperwork from both. And yeah, so if you want to have different brokers, I'd recommend maybe having your NISA account with one broker and your taxable account with the other, if you want to do it for diversification's sake. But having 2 taxable accounts is a bit of a pain. And that's it from the forum this week. Go to the forum, check it out, post some questions, and participate. It's a finance party on the RetireJapan forum.
I love that tagline. Yeah, excellent. Right. Well, before the party ends, I think we should go back to some Q&A that we had, some questions that we had earlier.
Okay.
So thank you for waiting patiently, people. Now, where did we get up to? I think it was Jatin who was next.
Yeah, we cut him up. We flashed it up for about half a second, didn't we?
Yeah, here we go. Right, thank you for your question. What is the best buy, a house or a condo, in terms of long-term investment and return on investment, ROI?
No idea. I think they've got pros and cons, and it depends on the time scale, it depends on the location, it depends on all sorts of things. The benefits of buying a house is that the land is likely to be more valuable. If you buy a condo, then you only own a tiny amount of the land for the entire structure, and the building depreciates. Also, if you own your house, you don't have to pay the fees that condo owners pay towards the repair fund, towards the building kind of staff and maintenance and so on. But you don't get those services either. So for me, I live in a condo. The best thing about living in a condo is I can put my trash out whenever I want, and that's amazing. I don't have to worry about what day it is. And also, you know, people clean it every month. People do the maintenance every month. We just had a huge kind of maintenance thing done with the repair fund. So there's pros and cons. You know, if you own your house, you're responsible for everything. If you own a condo, you're only responsible for the inside of your unit. Someone else will take care of the rest. So yeah, there's a lot of factors there, and there's certainly not a best buy.
Thinking about what Ziv, who we mentioned earlier, recommends, if it is for an investment property mostly for income, then he recommends a mansion, small, as you said earlier, small one-room thing, which is going to be a very relatively liquid market, so quite quick to buy and sell. Should get a steady income from that, and I think he tends to recommend buying in kind of second cities, so not Tokyo, probably not Yokohama, but places like Fukuoka, Kitakyushu, I guess Sendai would fall in that as well. And you might not get appreciation of the value of the property, but at least it's less likely to go down over time whilst you're getting that income. Neither of us have tried this. This is advice that we have heard from Ziv, so I do recommend checking out some of his videos on YouTube. Right, we had Nigel with a couple of questions related to gift taxes. So first part, is there a legal strategy or a technique to avoid paying gift tax? And can you get around the 1 million?
Oh, let's do this one first.
Oh, the longer one first.
Yeah, no, the first one first.
Oh, okay, I beg your pardon. Right.
Yeah. So yes, there are many. The best one, if you're talking about gift taxes outside of Japan, is not to be a permanent resident or a spouse visa holder. If you're on a working visa for the first 10 years in Japan, you're not liable for gift tax abroad. So that's the first strategy. If you are in Japan and the gift is in Japan, then there's all sorts of legal gifts. So, for example, you can give real estate to your spouse after you've been married for 20 years. 20 million years. Yeah, it feels like 20 million years. I see my wife watches this. I shouldn't say stuff like that. So after 20 years of marriage, you can give your spouse a gift of real estate of a substantial amount, and that's not taxed as a gift. Parents and grandparents, I believe, in some places can give their children money to buy a house with. That's not taxed as a gift. You have education trusts where you can give a lump sum towards a child's education. Again, like child or grandchild and so on. So there's all sorts. You need to talk to an accountant to figure out what's current and what you could use. But yeah. Cool. Let's go on to the second one.
So the second part of Nigel's question regarding gift taxes, can you get around the 1 million yen tax-free cap on a 2 million yen gift from parents by receiving 1 million yen from one parent, then receiving the other 1 million from the other parent?
Haha, no, because the 1.1 million yen tax-exempt amount is on the part of the receiver. So everyone living in Japan can receive up to 1.1 million yen from all sources within a tax year and not have to pay gift tax on it. So if two people give you 1.1 million yen, you've received 2.2. So it's how much you receive, not how much other people give you. So the giver doesn't pay gift tax. The person who receives it pays gift tax. Mm-hmm. So yeah, this wouldn't work.
Wow. Okay.
Unless they gave it to you on alternating years or something.
Ah, right. Yeah. All right. Pretty easy answer to that one. Next, Raphael again. So it seems like Japan is not really good for business or financial gain. I think there's other countries better suited to thrive in this area.
Yeah, quite possibly. So if you choose to live in Japan because of the perceived benefits like culture or safety or the environment, then you have to also choose to abide by Japanese tax and other laws, etc. So it's a trade-off, basically.
Yes, in the cryptocurrency community, there are always like the hot country that people should move to.
Dubai. Everyone go to Dubai.
Yeah, Dubai. At one point, it was Portugal. Now I think is it Paraguay now? I can't forget because
Really?
there's no taxes or it's it's always to do with taxes. But I think in the case of Portugal, I think they then changed that. So suddenly people who are living there have got to then find the next place to live. So if you're going to live somewhere because they've got low taxes, then you're open to, having to move because they could change it any time. Regarding Japan specifically, I think there are areas where it is actually good. And one for me is the taxation on dividends. So if you have got most of your wealth in either ETFs or individual stocks that pay dividends, if it's outside of a NISA, so first of all, you get a NISA allowance, and then if it's outside of that, you'll be taxed on it, but only at just over 20% fixed rate, no matter how much. So you could have millions and potentially millions of income on dividends, and you would just get that flat, just over 20% rate. So admittedly, that's an advantage if you're already rich. But it's an example of where there are some good sort of financial opportunities in Japan. It's just maybe not the same as in other countries.
Yeah, it's very easy to start a business. So in terms of paperwork and hassle, starting a business is very straightforward and easy compared to a lot of countries.
Yeah. Right, what else do we have? Consistency. What is the best or mostly used brokerage used in Japan by foreigners? I heard good things about Interactive Brokers. Do you know of anyone retired in Japan and living off dividend income? So 2 questions there. Thank you. Well, thank you for the question. So first of all, I've heard good things about Interactive Brokers. Is that the best or mostly used brokerage by foreigners? Is there another one you recommend?
So if you need an English language interface, Interactive Brokers is the only option. If you can work in Japanese and you're not a US citizen, I would say a Japanese broker is going to be a better fit for most people because they can use NISA, they can use taxable accounts that do your taxes for you. It's just a lot easier. But if you need English or you're a US citizen or you want access to something that Interactive Brokers has because it's huge and has access to most world markets, then that might be a better option. But for most people, Rakuten or Monex or SBI is going to be a better option.
Yeah, I use SBI, and I have to say it is not the most user-friendly. I want to think that it's not just because it's in Japanese. If it were in English, it would still be a horrible user interface, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I've got all 3. I use Rakuten mainly. Once you figure out which buttons you need, Rakuten's very simple. And mostly I'm doing automated monthly investments anyway. So I never really need to use the website.
Yeah. Okay, the second part of the question then. Do you know of anyone retired in Japan living off dividend income?
Not personally. I know people who are retired and have a pension and have dividend income on top of that. I don't know anyone. I mean, there's a few Japanese bloggers that, FIRE, they did the FIRE thing. They did financial independence, retired early with a dividend portfolio, and they're living off dividends now. And there's a few blogs in Japanese about that topic if you're interested. But it's very possible to do because you paid a flat 20%. And it's not going to count towards your income. So your health insurance, your taxes and so on are going to be very, very low if you do that. So it's a very good option if you're able to.
Yeah, I've seen Japanese people talk more and more about FIRE online. Seems to be a thing.
Atsugiri Jason has got his books, hasn't he?
Oh, of course, yeah. Right, we did Nigel's comment about solar panels. What else do we have? I think that might have been it in terms of questions. Oh, no, we did have other questions. I beg your pardon. Salary Cat, hello. Does the land have significant worth compared to the house when it comes to real estate? Is it better buying or building? Aha.
Yeah, so the land price is independent of the building price, and the building price is generally going to depreciate. It's a bit like buying a car. So buying a building in Japan, it's like buying a car, in that the price is going to fall over time, and eventually it's going to be worth nothing. And in the case of a building, it's going to be worth minus because you have to pay to knock the building down and cart away the rubble and all that kind of stuff. Whereas the land could stay the same price. The price could go up if it's a popular area, or the price could go down if not. So that's another factor to think about. Generally speaking, in some markets, the best value is like buying a 10 to 15-year-old home, because they've depreciated, but they were built with modern earthquake standards. And so they're often a lot cheaper than building a new one. If you can find something that's decent, that you like, and that doesn't need too much work, that's a good strategy generally.
Yeah, totally agree. The house that we bought about 5 years ago now is about 40 years old, so quite old from Japanese point of view. We had it earthquake checked, and it passed. It's not like the top protection. He said, you're going to get a few creaks and stuff if there's a big earthquake, but it won't fall down. Okay, that'll do. And we then had to renovate it. And because it was relatively old and hadn't been lived in for a while, it was pretty expensive. It ended up being about 10% of the cost of the whole land building package that we paid. So pretty expensive, but so much cheaper than if we had knocked it down and built again. I figure building a house is going to be about Nisenman. What's that?
Depends what you get. 20 million would be,
20
yeah,
million,
but
20
it
million.
really depends. You can pay a lot more than that.
Yes, I would see that as like a minimum sort of base for building a house. I don't think you'll get much.
So obviously, if you build, you get to specify exactly everything. So if you want to customize it, if you want it to have very good insulation and so on. My wife and I, we rebuilt her parents' place a few years back, where they've got a plot of land that they're not allowed to build on anymore. It's too close to a cliff. But you're allowed to renovate existing structures, and you can actually rip out the entire thing and rebuild the existing structure, which is what we did. So now they've got almost passive house standard insulation and air tightness and all that kind of thing. It's a really nice home now. And that was, how much was that? That was 25 million, I think, to renovate.
Oh, right.
But it's a very nice house now that we're going to get eventually, I hope. But maybe not too soon.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Celery Cat. King Neil is back with a couple of questions. Do you have a Japanese stock strategy?
No.
Okay.
My wife buys Japanese stocks, and she focuses on dividend-paying, stable, kind of blue-chip companies.
Yeah. Right at the beginning, we talked about how we find we have better returns in general by just sticking to funds, diversified funds. Having said that, personally, I do like doing all the analysis. So I'm just going to talk about that for a second. I don't recommend this necessarily, but what I like to do is look for something with a high dividend or relatively high dividend, a low price to book ratio, a low price to sale ratio. Those are my three main things. And more, I'm thinking it's not necessarily about this compared to other companies in that sector, but it could be compared to its own past history. So pharmaceutical companies generally tend to have a high PE, a price to earnings ratio. Therefore, if you filter just by price to earnings of 15, for example, you're pretty much always going to filter out pharmaceutical companies, even if there are relative bargains in there. So I'm thinking maybe it's better to look at an individual company's history and look for one that's got a low PE compared to what it had over the past 10 years, for example. At some point, I'll do some of my own research and analysis on that, but I haven't done it. Anyway, that's my personal thing. It probably doesn't work for most people, but that's what I use.
Okay.
So here's another. King Neil has another follow-up question. How about Webull Japan as a broker?
So I just had a look at that, and I hadn't heard of it before. And it doesn't seem like they have NISA or tax reporting accounts. So I would say for most people, it's going to be much better to go with one of the big Japanese brokers, because then you get a tax-free NISA account, which is the best option for most people, unless they're American citizens in Japan.
Right. Yeah.
And if you're an American citizen, then you might as well just get Interactive Brokers instead. So not sure that Webull Japan brings anything to the table, but I might be wrong. Let me know in the comments.
Next, then we have Nasi Lobo. Thank you for the question. Did you say dividend income doesn't count towards income when it comes to taxes? Yeah, sorry, I might not have been clear about this. You do have to pay income tax on dividend income, but it is a flat rate regardless of your total income. So, for example, let's say you get a salaried income. Your salaried income increases over the years. Therefore, your whole sort of personal tax rate will increase over the years, but your dividend income tax rate will stay the same at just over 20-ish%. I am not a tax expert. I'm not an accountant, but this is what I've found from my research.
Yeah, me neither. So my understanding is if the dividend shares are inside a tokute koza, so a tax deducting account, you don't have to declare that to the tax office because the broker takes care of it for you.
Oh, right.
So that wouldn't be I'm not entirely sure. I haven't done this myself, and there may be situations where it doesn't work, but I don't think they count towards, say, calculating your health insurance or stuff like that, provided they're in a tax deducting tokute koza account. And the government's talking about changing that to get rid of this loophole.
Yeah, that's as much
But
as
yeah,
we know.
we're not tax accountants. I have no idea. Talk to your accountant or the tax office to get real tax information.
Yeah. Right, next consistency. My wife is Japanese and it's still a way off, but my plan is to retire there, here in Japan, become a permanent resident, use dividends to live off. Thanks so much for the information.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, good. But yeah, be aware, as Ben just mentioned, it's possible that the sort of the favorable tax treatment of the dividends could change. I think they've been talking about it for a while, and I've got a feeling there's lots of people in government who don't want that to happen because they're enjoying the tax benefits. So it might take a while for any change there, but it's possible at any time.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the end of the world if suddenly you do actually have to pay income tax on whatever.
And I think we both agree that you don't come to Japan to enjoy the tax benefits. You come to Japan because you love the culture, you love the lifestyle, you love the country as a whole.
And you have to contribute in order to get those benefits. So if you want to have tax benefits, go to Singapore or Dubai. I don't think I'd want to live in Dubai from the little research I've done, but that's where you go if you don't want to pay tax.
Salary Cat says, very interesting. Thank you. Appreciate that. Arslan Chima has questions too. Any individual stocks you're buying? I know you're into ETFs and mutual funds.
So I'm into mutual funds specifically because they have a couple of advantages in Japan rather than ETFs. And I don't buy any individual stocks. My wife has some dividend paying stocks, but it's the usual, dividend paying stocks in Japan. You can look for, there's a whole bunch of websites that introduce Haito stocks, basically, which is dividends, and they have rankings and lots of details. So that's where I'd start if you're into that kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't really want to give individual stock recommendations, so I won't. One thing I did come up on
You're dying to, aren't you? You're like, yeah, I've got this great tip.
One thing that came up on my radar not long ago was Kubota, the big, I think they make diggers and stuff like that.
My wife's dad worked for them.
Oh, really?
How many years? Yeah.
All right. But since it goes back to timing the market, since they've been on my radar and I didn't do anything about it, they've now gone up in value and they don't seem like much of a bargain to me at the current price. I forgot to mention earlier, as well as the sort of the high dividend stuff and the good value that I go for, recently more and more I've been looking at how much of their revenue comes from outside of Japan. Kubota is something like 80% of their revenues from outside Japan.
Right.
Kirin is a lot, Honda, Nissan, a lot. So all the sort of big Japanese brands with foreign exposure, to me, that's appealing because I don't want to risk too much on the Japan the demography. No, it's not demography. What's the word?
Demographics.
Demographics. Thank you. Yeah, but that's just my style. Arslan Chima asks, are we not holding any crypto, especially when the US is approving cryptocurrency ETFs? Well, we did cover this quite a lot at the beginning.
We did cover it earlier, so you have to watch the replay.
Rewinding. Yeah, we took that for quite a while. Nasi Lobos confirms, yes, the tax rate for dividends is 20.3%.
20.315, actually.
Oh, very good. Very good. He knows his
It goes to 3 decimal places.
Right. Why not just 20%? I don't know. Anyway, TIJ.
The 0.315 is reconstruction tax to help rebuild Tohoku that they've been wasting by spending elsewhere. So
right. The temporary one that's permanent. Yeah. Okay. Of course.
Yeah. It's been spent on
you.
vanity projects across Japan.
Yeah. Well, anyway, thank you for researching that for us. We appreciate that. And the last one we have at the moment is Arslan Chima again with, what's your opinion on Chinese stocks? That's the only market that is cheap now. I believe that's an opportunity.
Don't know. Agnostic. I own Chinese stocks as part of my world stock ETF. Mutual funds, basically.
Oh, of course.
China's a part of the developing markets allocation for that.
Yeah.
I just from a position of complete ignorance, I would say that Chinese stocks are kind of politically dangerous, given that they keep renationalizing companies and arbitrarily changing the rules there. So, don't know. It might be an opportunity. It might be a good way to lose all your money. We shall see.
Yeah. Personally, the same. I don't touch them directly at all. No interest. I must own them indirectly through funds. I did see one of the Emax's funds. I think they sold quite a lot of Chinese companies and bought Indian companies with that money. That's not a recommendation. That's just what one big fund does. Yeah. That's all we have to say, I think.
Yeah, I think that was Morningstar. Morningstar changed the index.
Was it?
Therefore, they traded to match the new index.
Oh, okay. Oh, right. Oh, that makes sense then. Oh. Yeah.
Excellent. We were over 2 hours. I don't know how we got over 2 hours. That's awesome. Thanks for joining us on our random and, meandering journey tonight. And I hope you found it interesting, fun, useful. See you on the next one.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Good night. Have a good summer.